Okay, so you sent us some really interesting material about Tanzania. The elections coming up, October 2025.
Yeah, things seem to be shifting quite a bit there.
Exactly. You're clearly looking for more than just headlines, and we want to dig into that. We're going to focus quite a bit on this commentary from Felistus Kandia. She's an associate researcher at the Mashariki Research and Policy Center, or MRPC.
Right. Her piece, Tanzania's 2025 elections, the quiet collapse of political competition, it really lays out some serious questions.
It does. So our mission here is to unpack that MRPC analysis, Kandia's insight specifically, to give you a much clearer picture of what's actually happening on the ground.
Well, Felistus Kandia, in that MRPC commentary, she starts right off with the big event, CHADEMA getting disqualified, the main opposition.
And not for, like, policy reasons.
No, that's what's striking, and Kandia highlights this. It was stated as a procedural thing, apparently. They didn't sign some code of conduct.
Just like that.
Seems so. And the immediate impact, as the MRPC piece points out, is that Tanzania's most significant opposition voice is just silenced, gone from the ballot.
Which leads right to that question Felistus Kandia asks in the MRPC commentary, doesn't it? Something like, what's an election even mean if the main competitor is out before it starts?
Exactly. Can democracy really work, she asks, if competition is basically removed beforehand?
It's a powerful question.
And what Felistus Kandia and the MRPC really underscore is the contrast. Remember when President Samia Suluhu Hassan came in back in 2021?
Yeah, there was definitely a different feeling then, some optimism maybe.
Right. Media bans were lifted, some opposition figures got released, political rallies were actually allowed again in early 2023. It felt like, an opening up.
It really did. But now, as Felistus Kandia's MRPC commentary lays out, and you see it echoed in reporting from, say, the AP and Human Rights Watch from April.
Right, April 2025.
That initial momentum seems, well, gone, reversed even. You've got CHADEMA disqualified, their candidate Tundu Lissu arrested.
And those treason charges reported by Reuters and the Chanzo, too. It's a very different picture now.
Which brings us back to that point from Felistus Kandia's MRPC analysis. What began with the promise of reform now risks being remembered as the moment when democracy was carefully managed rather than truly revitalized.
Oof, yeah. And Kandia, for the MRPC, she digs into how this is happening. It looks like legal tools are being used to, squeeze out the competition.
So this code of conduct thing with CHADEMA, it might look procedural on the surface.
Exactly. But using it to bar the main opposition, well, it makes you question the neutrality of institutions, like the courts, doesn't it? That's a concern the MRPC raises.
And Felistus Kandia's commentary specifically mentions laws, right? The Political Parties Act, the Election Act, saying they give electoral authorities a lot of room to maneuver.
A lot of discretion, yeah. That's a key point in the MRPC analysis. This wide discretion can potentially be used, perhaps, to favor the incumbent.
Sounds familiar, unfortunately.
Well, Felistus Kandia, writing for MRPC, she connects it to this broader idea of competitive authoritarianism. You see it in the region.
Like where?
Think Uganda, Ethiopia, maybe. Freedom House has documented how opposition groups there face all sorts of legal hurdles, administrative barriers. It's not, a total shutdown, but
it makes real competition incredibly difficult.
Precisely. It's this concept Levitsky and Way wrote about. You have elections, you have opposition parties, but the system is manipulated so the ruling party almost always wins.
So the appearance of democracy is maintained, but the substance is managed.
That's the term Felistus Kandia and the MRPC use, managed democracy. Legality in this view isn't about fairness, it's about cementing the status quo.
Okay, so if CHADEMA, the main alternative, is out, what does that do to the election's legitimacy? How do people see it? Kandia must address this in the MRPC piece.
Absolutely. The MRPC commentary stresses this point. Think about it. The ruling party, CCM, Shama Pinduzi, they've been in power since, 1977?
A very long time.
So if there's no real viable challenger, does the election become more like a coronation, a formality?
And do people just check out?
Well, look at the numbers Felistus Kandia cites from the National Electoral Commission. Voter turnout in 2020 was just over 50%.
Okay.
But in 2015, it was over 67%.
Wow, that's a big drop. A 17-point drop, roughly.
It suggests growing skepticism, doesn't it? And the MRPC commentary argues that when there's no credible opposition, elections can feel symbolic, leading people to disengage.
Losing faith in the whole process.
Exactly, which erodes that vital link between citizens and the government.
There's another angle Felistus Kandia brings up in the MRPC report that feels really critical to the youth. and the shrinking digital space.
Yes, that's a huge dynamic. As Kandia, writing for MRPC, points out, young people are a massive part of Tanzania's population. Maybe around 34–35% are between 15 and 35.
And they live online politically too, right?
Increasingly, yes. Digital platforms are vital for information, for debate, for organizing. But the state's reaction, as the MRPC commentary details, has been to clamp down.
You mentioned specific regulations, like the online content regulations from 2020, amendments to cybercrime laws.
That's right. Felistus Kandia and the MRPC point to things like licensing rules for bloggers, hefty fees, increased surveillance.
So making it harder and riskier to speak out online.
Definitely. Plus warnings about VPNs, sometimes blocking telecoms during protests, and these really broad definitions of false information that groups like Article 19 have flagged. It creates a chilling effect.
And it's not just online, is it? I think the MRPC commentary mentioned something even more disturbing. Activists disappearing.
Yeah, that's incredibly serious. Felistus Kandia cites the Tanzania Human Rights Defenders Coalition, reporting at least 17 forced disappearances or abductions of youth activists between 2022 and 2024.
17. That's chilling.
It absolutely is. And Kandia's analysis in the MRPC piece connects this atmosphere of repression directly to youth disillusionment. There's that Afrobarometer data from 2023.
What did that show?
A really sharp drop in the number of young people who believe elections actually reflect the will of the people, only 29% in 2023.
29%. Wow. How does that compare?
It was down 14 points just since 2018.
It's fast. And it leads back to that question Kandia poses in the MRPC commentary, doesn't it? If democracy isn't working for the youth.
What future does it hold for the nation? It's a fundamental challenge.
And she argues in the MRPC piece that this isn't just a Tanzania story.
No, Felistus Kandia is very clear on this. She frames it within a regional pattern of this managed democracy.
The commentary mentions Uganda, Rwanda.
Yeah, look at the restrictions on Bobi Wine in Uganda, the very limited space for opposition in Rwanda. Kandia and the MRPC see a shared playbook.
Keeping up appearances while getting the actual competition.
That's the core argument in the MRPC analysis, using courts, using commissions, these formal institutions, to essentially neutralize any real challenge to power.
Okay, so let's try and pull the threads together. Based on Felistus Kandia's analysis for the Mashariki Research and Policy Center, what's the main takeaway for the 2025 election?
The big concern, as Kandia puts it in the MRPC commentary, is that it risks being less of a genuine democratic choice and more of a carefully orchestrated performance of continuity.
A performance.
Yeah. And she stresses it's not just one thing, it's the combination. CHADEMA's exclusion, the long dominance of the CCM, the shrinking civic and digital space, and this growing youth alienation, they all feed into each other.
And the MRPC commentary is clear.
Mm-hmm.
This matters beyond Tanzania's borders.
Absolutely. Felistus Kandia and the MRPC position this as a regional warning sign. The health of democracy across East Africa, they argue, really hinges on genuine competition, on inclusion, on accountability.
Without those things.
Without those, the MRPC commentary concludes, you risk entrenching a new kind of authoritarianism disguised in constitutionalism and legal correctness. Basically, authoritarianism wearing democratic clothes.
Wow. This has been, well, quite sobering, but incredibly valuable. Really digging into Felistus Kandia's analysis from the Mashariki Research and Policy Center gives such a different perspective. It shows how these, procedural moves can fundamentally alter a country's path.
It really does. And thinking about those regional trends Kandia and the MRPC highlighted and everything happening in Tanzania, it leaves you, the listener, with a pretty significant question to mull over.
Right. Considering these patterns, what are the long-term implications for democracy right across East Africa? And, is there a role for external actors, whatever that might mean, in supporting genuine democratic processes?
Definitely something to think about. And we'd encourage you to check out the sources cited in that MRPC commentary if you want to go even deeper.